Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I've got a jaw-dropping story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. It's about a wild party, a secret affair, and the explosive reaction when everything came crashing down. The title of this video is At the Party. My side guy couldn't resist. My husband caught us and reacted. My name is Allison Parker, and this is my story. It was supposed to be just another party, but it turned out to be the night everything fell apart. The car ride home was awful. Mark, my husband, kept bombarding me with relentless questions about my disappearance at the party. His accusations were thinly veiled, chipping away at my composure. To make matters worse, his sister Sandra had moved in temporarily to help out, but her presence felt more like a dagger in my back. Mark played the devoted dad with our kids upstairs, while Sandra supervised dinner with military precision, throwing sarcastic comments my way. I was overwhelmed, my world collapsing around me. And then there was Jake, the man I had been seeing on the side, texting me nonstop, desperate to meet. The car ride home was awful. Mark's relentless questions about my disappearance, laced with thinly veiled accusations, chipped away at my carefully constructed composure. And then, the cherry on top, Sandra moved in. Temporarily, Mark insisted while she finds her feet. Ah, like that woman has ever needed help finding her feet. She's got stiletto heels, and she's not afraid to stab you in the back. Every nerve in my body is on fire. Mark has the kids upstairs playing the devoted dad after days of stony silence. Sandra glares at me from the kitchen, supervising dinner with military precision. You feeling better, Allison? It sounds like a concern, but it drips with sarcasm. Just a little overwhelmed, I manage. It's the closest I can get to the truth. That my entire world is collapsing. And these two are the architects of my destruction. Jake's been texting nonstop. He's worried, but there's a hint of desperation in his messages now. Wants to meet. Says it's urgent. I can't risk it. Mark's on high alert, and Sandra's probably got hidden cameras in every corner of this damn house. The stifling normalcy of dinner is torture. Sandra's passive-aggressive comments about families supporting each other make my skin crawl. Mark offers empty platitudes about therapy, about giving our marriage one more shot. I want to scream. Doesn't he know he's the one who broke it all? Not just with the affair, but with the lies, the shady deals. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. I need a plan. I don't even know who the enemy is anymore. Sure, Sandra hates my guts. But is she behind the blackmail? Or is this all about Mark's tangled web of deceit? And how did Jake get pulled into this whole mess? I feel a flash of anger. At Jake for the recklessness of our affair. At Mark for being the reason I even looked elsewhere. But mostly, the rage burns inward. How did I become so blind, so complicit in my own misery? The blackmail emails haven't stopped. They've changed tone though. It's less about exposing me to Mark. More about the damage those revelations would cause him. Threats about financial irregularities. Hinting at his business dealings. So this isn't some jealous lover or scorned ex-employee. It's someone who knows exactly how to destroy him. Is that my out? I almost laugh. The wife. The scorned one. Becoming the unlikely savior. Exposing Mark's shady secrets might ruin me as well, but honestly, there's not much left to ruin. It's a risky game, and I'm already in way over my head. I desperately need an ally. Someone I trust with my life. My gut tells me it's not Beth. Not anymore. She means well, but she's too loyal. Too quick to offer the practical solution. This mess needs something more drastic. Grace, the private investigator. She's sharp. Cynical. She'll get the kind of twisted satisfaction I need out of all this. The question is, can I trust her? She knows all my dirty laundry. Holds the evidence right in her hands. If I played this wrong, the kids. My heart aches just thinking about them. How the hell do I protect them when their own father, their own grandmother, are the ones tearing our world apart? I'm their mother. I'm supposed to keep them safe, but what if I make it worse? Sleep is impossible. My mind spins in circles, every scenario ending in disaster. I need clarity. A decision. And then it hits me. Jake. He was there at the beginning. He has a stake in this, whether he admits it or not. Yes, he messed up big time, but if there's one person who understands this level of desperation, it's him. I glance at the clock. It's past 2 a.m. Screw it. I slip out of bed, careful not to wake Mark, and grab my phone. My fingers tremble slightly as I type out the message I've been avoiding. We need to talk. Tomorrow. It's life or death. My heart thuds in my ears as I stare at the computer screen. The sender is masked behind a string of random numbers and letters, yet their intent is crystal clear. It's confirmation. My tormentor knows about Jake. They know everything. I sit motionless, paralyzed by a strange mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Should I open it? Is it another twisted trap filled with photos and accusations to ensure my complete devastation? A wave of nausea hits. Maybe ignorance would have been better. But now I need to know exactly what I'm facing. My finger hovers over the mouse. Do it. A dark voice whispers insidiously. Don't be a coward. My pulse quickens as I click. The email is short, sinister. No graphic evidence of my affair, just meticulously detailed accusations. Dates and times of my rendezvous with Jake. Descriptions of our usual meeting spots. There's even an unsettling mention of the tattoo on his shoulder. The one I foolishly confided in him about. This isn't the work of an amateur. Then a veiled threat. They promise to reveal all to Mark, but only as a last resort. The implication is clear. Cooperate or face total destruction. But cooperate? How? What the hell do they want from me? Money? No. That feels too simple. This person, whoever they are, enjoys their cruelty. It's about power, control. And they have it all. I'm their puppet now, and I don't even understand the play. A chilling thought strikes. What if they don't reveal the affair? What if they set Mark up somehow, pin a crime on him? The blackmail emails hinted at Mark's shady business dealings. Could this be an elaborate revenge scheme? One where I'm just collateral damage? My phone bursts to life. It's Jake. Relief washes over me for a second. And then I remember the urgency of his earlier message. His voice is a panicked rush when I answer. Barely a greeting. Someone reached out to my brother. They know about us. They want money, Allison. A lot of money, he spills out. My stomach churns. How did they find him? How did they? I trail off, the enormity of it crushing me. I don't know. Could Mark have someone tailing me? Or I don't even know who would do this. Jake sounds close to tears. His desperation fuels my own, but I force myself to think. What did your brother say? To meet tomorrow. A secluded spot outside town. I told him I'd bring cash. Don't go, I snap back. It's dangerous. We need to go to the police. You're kidding, right? Cops? They'll expose our affair. Besides, this isn't some random mugging. Whoever's behind it is too connected. They'll know if we go to the authorities. His words hit uncomfortably close to home. There's a twisted logic in it. One that speaks to the kind of people we might be dealing with. So, what do we do then? Just give them money. I can't even get that kind of cash, I say, panic bleeding into my voice. The silence on the line stretches. It's the unspoken truth. Neither of us has any answers. I'll meet them. I need to try and reason with them. But you, Allison, Jake's voice trails off, a mixture of fear and reluctant acceptance. I know I need to disappear. I say it hollowly, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. Where do I even go? How do I explain this to the kids? Mark's footsteps coming up the stairs snap me back into the present. I slam the laptop shut, my movements frantic. Just another day in my perfect crumbling world. My fingers tremble as I open the cabinet under the bathroom sink. My emergency stash, not the first aid kit, but the other one. The bundle of wrinkled cash I painstakingly collected. Birthday money from my parents I never spent. Forgotten checks from distant relatives. It's pitiful. Nowhere near what Jake's blackmailer demanded, but it's all I have. Pathetic. That word circles my mind like a vulture. It applies to almost every aspect of my life right now. It's pathetic that this is the best I can do. It's pathetic that I even entertained the idea that running away was a solution, let alone a practical one. Yesterday I called in sick to the soup kitchen. I spent the entire day packing a single small suitcase and making heartbreaking to-do lists for Mark. School pickup schedules, the vet's number, reminders about the allergies. It was like penning instructions for my own erasure. Mark was strangely solicitous, asking about my doctor's appointment and suggesting takeout for dinner. His guilt, or more likely his desire to regain control, is suffocating. I'm starting to see why people in these situations just cave. Give in to the blackmail. It'd be easier. Maybe I'd get some peace. A few months before the next demand, the next escalation. But the thought of rewarding this monster, this shadowy figure destroying me from afar. No. There's a flicker of defiant anger left in me, and I'm going to cling to it with all I've got. Beth calls. She's been relentless, a lifeline in this self-imposed isolation. You okay? Any word from Jake? Yeah, I force myself to say it out loud. Maybe then it'll feel more real. I gave him the money, all I could find. He's meeting them today. There's a beat of silence. Allison, that's crazy. This won't end. You know that, right? Beth's voice is sharp, frustration bleeding through. She's not wrong. What else could I do? Sit and wait for them to turn up on our doorstep? At least this way. Maybe Jake can figure something out. I try to sound convincing, but even to my own ears, it rings hollow. Beth sighs. I'm heading over. This whole thing is a mess, but you shouldn't deal with it alone. Her tone softens slightly. She's a true friend, sometimes to a fault. Her loyalty has never wavered, not even now when I'm at my least deserving. When Beth arrives, my kitchen counter is transformed into a makeshift war room. My laptop is open, displaying maps of the secluded area where Jake's meeting is supposed to take place. Beside it, Jake's cryptic text with the location details. I've been staring at it so long, the words blur and warp. What about Grace, your investigator? Can she trace the phone? Beth asks after surveying the scene. No luck. Whoever's behind the blackmail is good. It's either a burner or routed through so many proxies it's pointless. I wave a hand in frustration. I'd half hoped Grace might uncover something, anything to give a name to this faceless torment. Beth bites her lip. She knows I'm out of options, that I'm placing an impossible amount of faith in Jake and his ability to manage a situation he's ill-equipped to handle, yet she doesn't voice the obvious. We drive. It's the middle of the day, the road's busy with ordinary, unremarkable lives. I should be at school pickup, wrangling the kids into the car for soccer practice. Instead, I'm about to witness the fallout of one disastrous decision, its consequences rippling outwards in ways I can't even predict. The area Jake described is exactly as sinister as it sounded. Abandoned warehouses, overgrown lots, the relics of some failed industrial project. We park a safe distance away, using binoculars to scan the desolate landscape. Do you see him? I try to keep my voice steady, but the binoculars tremble in my hands. There, a flicker of movement outside a crumbling, half-built structure. It's Jake. My heart sinks. He's alone. My hands squeeze the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turn white. We're too far away to see clearly, but the tension between Jake and the figures looming over him is unmistakable. One, burly and menacing. Another, smaller, concealed beneath a bulky hoodie. Neither faces us. A calculated move, likely intentional from whoever set this up. Jake's an idiot, Beth mutters beside me. He should have never gone alone. A surge of guilt washes over me. Yes, it's a stupid risk, but he's doing this because of me. Because I was too cowardly to face the consequences of my actions. My stomach twists as I consider if this goes wrong. Jake might pay the price for my mistakes. We watch helplessly. The figures approach Jake, forming a semicircle. One of them gestures threateningly. They're too far for us to hear the words, but the intent is clear. It's enough to break the fragile dam holding back my panic. I can't just sit here. I almost shout, my voice raw. I fumble for the car door handle, but Beth grabs my arm. Allison, stop. We'll make everything worse. Look. Her sudden urgency forces me to focus. Jake is holding out the envelope with the cash. The exchange happens quickly. Money for silence. The figures turn to leave. It seems anticlimactic. A tense, terrible moment hanging in the air, and then it might just be over. Relief washes over me, but it quickly curdles into suspicion. This feels too easy. My tormentor, whoever they are, enjoys playing games. Would they really just take the money and disappear? The answer comes a moment later. Jake is on the ground, doubled over. One of the figures, the burly one, kicks him viciously. The other stands by, almost casually, as if this is part of the agreed-upon deal. I feel sick watching the assault unfold helplessly from afar. Oh my God, he's going to kill him. Beth's voice is a terrified whisper. I don't stop to think. There's only a primal instinct taking over. I throw the car into reverse, slamming my foot on the gas pedal. The tires squeal as I tear out of our hiding spot, aiming straight for the scene. Beth screams my name, but it's lost beneath the roar of the engine. I see the assailants scramble as the car hurtles towards them, but my focus is solely on Jake. I have to get him out of there. I can only imagine the thoughts racing through those men's minds. A surprise attack. A woman scorned coming to the rescue? I prey on whatever sliver of rationality they have left that it's enough to make them retreat before things turn truly deadly. The chaos happens in a blur. Screeching tires, shouts, Jake scrambling towards the car, Beth's panicked voice in my ear, dust and fear clogging my throat as I gun the engine and swing the car around in a whiplash turn. I don't see the men again. Jake stumbles into the passenger seat, clutching his side and gasping for breath. We speed away, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs. Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay. I babble, glancing at Jake. He's bruised, bleeding slightly, but alive. That's the only thing that matters right now. My hands still shake from adrenaline hours later, driving Jake to a discreet urgent care clinic. My thoughts were a chaotic jumble. We concocted a story about a mugging gone wrong, vague enough to explain the bruises without arousing too much suspicion. We didn't stick around long enough for questions. Get some rest, I tell him, as I drop him off in a dimly lit part of town. I'll check in later, stay off your phone for a while. He nods numbly, the fight gone out of him. We both know this is far from over. Back at home, an eerie normalcy descends. It's like the eye of a hurricane, a temporary lull before the true destruction. Mark fusses around me, a strange mix of anger and misplaced concern. He questions my erratic behavior, my unexplained trip to the doctor. I offer short replies, feigning exhaustion. He doesn't buy it entirely, but plays along for now. Sandra, ever the opportunist, swoops in under the guise of supporting the family. She cooks, cleans, casts suspicious glances my way. The kids look on, a mixture of confusion and relief. Domestic order is restored, even if the foundation it rests on is rotten to the core. My phone buzzes. It's Grace. I rush to the bathroom, locking the door behind me as if that offers any real privacy. You need to see this. Grace's voice crackles through the speaker. She's usually unflappable, but there's an urgency in her tone now that sends a shiver down my spine. Tell me, I almost whisper, bracing myself. I traced the blackmail emails further than I thought possible. Multiple redirects, dummy servers, the works. But they slipped up, left a trace. The IP resolved to a residential address. My pulse quickens. Whose address? Your mother-in-law's. The words slam against me like a physical blow. No, it can't be. Sure, Sandra hates me, but this is something else entirely. Her hatred is petty, vindictive. This calculated torment, the threats against Jake, the connection to Mark's shady dealings? It doesn't add up. Are you sure? I managed to squeak out. There has to be a mistake. Positive. No room for error. I'll send you the full report. The call ends abruptly. I stare at my reflection in the mirror. Is this what I've become? A stranger to myself, trapped in a house of horrors, surrounded by monsters disguised as loved ones. Betrayal cuts deeper than any blackmail threat. I feel a white-hot rage consume me, not towards Sandra, but towards Mark. His lies, whatever darkness he's hidden from everyone, all of it facilitated my blind complicity. Maybe Sandra is my tormentor, motivated by a twisted desire to punish him through me. It's almost laughable. I'm caught in the crossfire of a war I never saw coming. Beth arrives later that evening, armed with takeout and a bottle of wine. I don't even try to protest. We sit on the couch in my perfectly manicured living room, surrounded by the trappings of a life I no longer recognize. So, what's the play? Do you tell Mark? This can't continue, Beth says after a long, contemplative sip of her wine. I don't know. I stare at my reflection in the wine glass, the liquid swirling inside. It's not a question of if, but when. Everything will shatter. For the first time, I see not only the wreckage of my life, but also the possibility of rebuilding amidst the ashes. I wake to the sound of rain. The steady drumming against the cabin's roof should be soothing. Instead, it mirrors the relentless chaos raging in my head. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind a tangled web of accusations, revelations, and desperate plans. I replay Grace's report over and over in my head. Sandra's accounts, the money trail, it all points to Jake's mysterious cousin. I still can't wrap my brain around it. Jake, my lover, turning into another villain in this twisted story? Beth texts with an update. More news coverage. Mark making public pleas for my return. Photos of the kids plastered on local newsstands. Pawns in a desperate bid for sympathy. Sandra, surprisingly, is silent. Is it calculated strategy, or did I misjudge her role in all this? My phone buzzes. It's him. Jake. We need to talk. His voice is a raspy whisper, filled with desperation and something else. Fear. Where are you? I try to keep my voice steady, but a tremor of anticipation runs through me. The end of the blackmail, or another trap. The park. The one we used to meet. Please, Allison, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. His voice trails off, a plea hanging heavy in the air. Intuition, or is it foolishness, pushes me to agree. Despite everything, there's a flicker of hope. Could this be a way out? Could Jake hold the answers, not as a perpetrator, but as an unexpected ally? The rain has stopped, leaving the park eerily empty. The swings creak in the breeze, a chilling soundtrack to my solitude. I perch on a bench, scanning the paths for any sign of Jake. There. A familiar figure emerges from the thinning mist. My heart thuds against my ribs as he approaches. Jake looks disheveled, haunted. He collapses onto the bench next to me, burying his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, he chokes out. For all of it, he explains, his voice gaining strength as he pours out the sordid truth. His cousin, a low-level grifter caught in mounting debt. The blackmail scheme that spiraled out of control. Not a grand plan, but a desperate act fueled by greed. Jake was meant to be little more than a pawn, a believable target for my affections. He never dreamt it'd escalate to threats of physical harm, or that my tormentor would turn her sights on him as well. Claire. I say her name aloud, a bitter taste in my mouth. She used you. Jake nods, shame etched across his face. She knew about my debts, knew my weaknesses. Promised a quick fix, a way out. Said you were an easy mark. A lonely rich housewife? My hands curl into fists. Betrayal slices through me, from Claire, from Jake, from my own blindness. Mark has to know, I mutter, more to myself than to Jake. It's a desperate act of self-preservation now. Mark's secrets are my shield, a weapon to wield against this woman who wants to destroy us both. Are you sure? Jake's voice holds a flicker of hope, a selfish desire to keep his own sins hidden. It sparks a flicker of disgust within me. We're all ruined anyway, I say grimly. Let's at least try to control how the wreckage falls. And with that, a plan forms. A risky, desperate plan with no guarantee of success. But what choice do I have? Other than to remain a pawn in someone else's vicious game? My hands feel clammy as I push open the heavy door of the police station. The sterile lights, the smell of stale coffee, it all brings back a visceral wave of nausea. I was here just days ago, but I feel like a different person. Stronger, hardened, stripped of the naivete that got me into this nightmare. Detective Carter greets me, his expression a careful mix of weariness and something approaching grudging respect. Mrs. Thorne? He nods curtly, gesturing toward an interrogation room. Even my name feels foreign now, a relic of a life that no longer exists. He lays it out. The charges leveled against Mark, the damning evidence, Claire's confession outlining the web of deceit. He spares me the gory details, but it's clear Mark's fall will be swift and complete. Sandra's fate is less certain, her role more calculated, hidden behind shell companies and plausible deniability. Questions follow, relentless and sharp, digging into my affair with Jake, the depths of my willful blindness. There's judgment in the detective's eyes, but also a flicker of understanding. A woman caught in her own gilded cage, fighting for survival with the only weapons she knew. Walking out of the station, I don't feel vindication, just a dull exhaustion. There's no winning here, only degrees of loss. I head straight to Mark's sprawling office, the place that was once the symbol of his success, now a target for media vultures and bankruptcy lawyers. He's hunched over his desk, a broken figure. The hatred radiating from him is palpable, but for the first time, I don't cower from it. How could you? He spits out. I gave you everything. Everything was a lie, Mark. A house of cards built on stolen money and other people's ruin, I retort, my voice steady. There's no room for his self-pity, not when my own life is in shambles. The fight leaves him, replaced by a bitter resignation. I watch him sign papers I only half understand, legal jargon that translates into a future far less lavish than the one I was promised. There's a small satisfaction in seeing his world crumble, a sliver of justice in his downfall. Beth is my lifeline through the ensuing chaos. We spend countless nights poring over documents, deciphering legal strategies. She's both my lawyer and my rock, a constant in a world devoid of any familiar ground. My children, their faces haunt my sleepless nights. Too young to understand, old enough to sense the brokenness. Shared custody becomes a battleground, Mark wielding their hurt as ammunition against me. It's a pain unlike any I've ever known, the guilt of my choices cutting deepest now. The volunteering starts as an act of desperation, a need to fill the empty hours, to feel some kind of purpose besides untangling a lifetime of deceit. The victim support group is where I end up, women and men, their eyes mirroring my own haunted desperation. Their stories unfold in hushed tones in sterile meeting rooms, stolen inheritances, retirement funds gambled away, betrayals that shatter families. Listening, I see the human cost of Mark's greed. I help where I can, small gestures against an ocean of suffering. There's no redemption in it, only a desperate grasping for a way to make amends, to rebuild myself from the inside out. 1 year later, sitting in a crowded coffee shop, I see him. Jake. He looks older, thinner, a shadow of the man I thought I knew. I freeze, unsure if I should hide, run, or face him head on. He notices me, a flicker of recognition, hesitation. Then he walks over. Can we talk? He asks, his voice hoarse. Awkward silences stretch between stilted apologies. Shared regrets are spilled alongside bitter truths. We dissect the wreckage of our choices, knowing neither of us deserves absolution, perhaps not even forgiveness. As he gets up to leave, a strange understanding settles between us. There's no promise of a second chance, of rekindled passion, only a shared acknowledgement of the storm we both weathered and the uncertain paths that lie ahead. My walk home is solitary. The future is still hazy, fraught with custody battles, uncertain finances, and the lingering sting of betrayal. But for the first time in a long while, I feel a sliver of hope. Not for a fairy tale ending, but for something real, something built on the shattered remains of the life I once knew. Because at the end of it all, that's all I have left myself. So, that's how my world came crashing down at that party and how everything unraveled from there. It's been a journey filled with regret, betrayal, and hard lessons. But I've learned from it and I'm moving forward. If you found this story intense and gripping, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more dramatic and personal stories like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an intense story to share about a woman who discovered her husband was cheating with their neighbor. Stay tuned for the full emotional journey and the unexpected consequences. In the quiet suburb where I lived, life always seemed to follow a predictable pattern. The days merged into one another, indistinguishable and monotonous. I, a 32-year-old woman, found myself trapped in this monotony, with 2 children to care for and a marriage that had long since lost its spark. My husband, the father of my children, had become more of a roommate than a partner over the years. Our conversations were limited to necessities, devoid of the warmth and affection that once defined us. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment our love started to fade, but now, all that was left were the remnants of a relationship that once held so much promise. One day, as I stood watching my youngest daughter play with her friends, I realized how deeply unhappy I was. I yearned for something, anything, that could break the suffocating routine of my daily life. That's when my neighbor, a man in his late 40s, entered my life in a way I never expected. We had crossed paths several times before, exchanging polite smiles and casual greetings. His daughter was in the same class as mine, a coincidence that brought us into each other's orbit more frequently. But it wasn't until the school year began that I noticed his interest in me. He had a charm about him, a confidence that I found intriguing. Despite knowing he was older than he claimed 49, not 45, as I had learned from a quick online search, I felt drawn to him. I never confronted him about his little lie. It seemed unnecessary. There was a thrill in this silent acknowledgement of his attempt to impress me. As the weeks passed, our casual encounters became more frequent. His warm greetings in the presence of his wife, the stolen glances when she wasn't looking, it all felt like a prelude to something forbidden yet exciting. One autumn afternoon, while our children played in the schoolyard, he struck up a conversation that felt different from our previous exchanges. His words were laced with compliments, subtle yet direct, making my heart race in a way it hadn't for years. He spoke of mundane things at first, but the conversation quickly turned personal. He mentioned how fortunate my husband must be, a statement that made me pause. It was then that I confessed something I had kept buried within me. I told him, in a voice barely above a whisper, that I no longer cared for my husband. The indifference in my tone surprised even me. I realized that I was not afraid of my husband finding out about any indiscretions. I was doing what I wanted, for the first time in a long while, and his opinion mattered little to me now. My neighbor looked at me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. It was as if he saw right through me, understanding the depth of my loneliness and dissatisfaction. That moment marked the beginning of our secret affair, an affair that promised to shatter the monotony of my life, but also threatened to upend everything I knew. In the following days, our interactions became more frequent and intimate. We shared knowing looks, whispered conversations, and laughter that seemed to fill a void in my heart. The risk of what we were doing only added to the thrill, the excitement of engaging in something so profoundly against the norms of our small community. But amidst this newfound excitement, a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. I was embarking on a path that could lead to heartbreak and scandal, yet I couldn't find it in myself to care. I was too caught up in the moment, too desperate to feel alive again. As I lay in bed each night, listening to the steady breathing of my husband, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would this affair be the escape I longed for, or would it be the catalyst for my life's unraveling? Only time would tell. But for now, I was willing to risk it all for a taste of the unknown, for a chance to feel something, anything, other than the numbing emptiness of my everyday existence. As autumn leaves began to paint the streets in shades of red and gold, so too did my life start to change color. The mundane routines that once defined my existence gave way to a series of secret encounters and stolen moments with my neighbor. Each glance, each whispered word, felt like a step further into a world far removed from my unfulfilling marriage. It all started with a seemingly innocent proposal to meet at the local park. The children were our alibi, playing innocently, oblivious to the undercurrents between their parents. There, amidst the laughter of children and the rustling of leaves, we talked. It was the kind of conversation that revealed more in its silences than in words. He spoke of his own marriage, a union that, like mine, had lost its spark. His honesty was disarming, and in those moments, I saw in him a kindred spirit, someone else trapped in the facade of a happy domestic life. The more we talked, the more evident it became that we were both seeking an escape, a way to fill the voids in our hearts. Our meetings at the park became a regular affair. Each rendezvous was a mix of casual chatter and intimate confessions. We spoke about everything and nothing, our conversations meandering like the winding paths around us. The more time we spent together, the more I found myself drawn to him. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time, a mixture of anticipation, excitement, and a hint of guilt. Then came the day when our interactions took a decisive turn. As we sat on a secluded bench, watching our children play at a distance, he turned to me with a look that sent a jolt of electricity through my body. He spoke of his desire, of how he had been thinking about me, how he wished I lived next door so he could see me every day. His words, spoken with a sincerity that was almost palpable, left me breathless. In that moment, I realized how much I craved attention and affection. My marriage had become a shell of formalities, and here was someone who saw me, who desired me. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. The boundaries of our relationship were blurring, and I found myself at a crossroads. Our first kiss happened days later. It was a moment stolen under the cover of dusk, away from prying eyes. His lips on mine were a shock to my system, awakening a part of me I thought had long since withered away. The kiss was brief but intense, leaving us both gasping for air and more aware than ever of the dangerous game we were playing. Our affair escalated quickly from there. We communicated through WhatsApp, sending messages late into the night while our spouses slept. Each message, each word, was a step further into uncharted territory. Our conversations were a mix of longing, desire, and the realities of our complicated lives. One night, when the opportunity presented itself, he came to see me. My husband was out, and his wife was busy with neighbors. The stars were our only witnesses as we embraced behind my house. It was a moment of passion and desperation, a physical manifestation of our emotional turmoil. The affair was like a fire, consuming and uncontrollable. We were both aware of the risks, yet we were unable to pull away. The more we indulged in our secret, the more intense our feelings grew. But with each stolen moment, the fear of discovery loomed larger. Our late-night conversations became our lifeline, a way to keep the connection alive even when we couldn't be together. We talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, and the uncertain future we were hurtling towards. It was a strange mix of reality and fantasy, a relationship built on fragile foundations. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I was living a double life, a devoted mother and wife by day, a passionate lover by night. The duality of my existence was both thrilling and exhausting. I was torn between the stability of my marriage and the intoxicating allure of the affair. I knew that what we were doing was wrong, that we were risking everything for these stolen moments. But in his arms, none of that seemed to matter. I was addicted to the way he made me feel, alive, desired, and free. As I lay in bed each night, my mind would wander to him, to our next meeting, to the possibilities that lay ahead. The affair had become my escape from reality, a secret world where I could be someone else, someone unburdened by the expectations and disappointments of my everyday life. But as the days passed, the reality of our situation became harder to ignore. We were playing with fire, and the consequences of our actions were becoming increasingly difficult to overlook. The fear of getting caught, the guilt of betrayal, and the uncertainty of the future began to weigh heavily on my mind. Our secret liaisons were no longer just about passion. They were about finding solace in each other from the dissatisfaction of our respective lives. We were both seeking something that we couldn't find in our marriages. Yet, the more entangled we became, the more I realized the complexity of our situation. I began to notice the subtle changes in his demeanor. The initial excitement and recklessness were slowly being replaced by a sense of caution. He spoke less freely, often glancing over his shoulder as if afraid of being seen. The reality of our affair and its potential impact on our families was dawning on us. One morning, as I watched him interact with his daughter, a pang of guilt struck me. We were not just two individuals seeking happiness. We were parents, spouses, members of a community. The potential fallout of our actions extended far beyond the confines of our secret world. Despite these realizations, the pull towards him remained strong. Every message, every touch, every shared glance was a reminder of the intense connection we had forged. Yet, with each passing day, the fear of our affair being discovered grew. We were treading on dangerous ground, risking everything for moments of fleeting happiness. Our affair was a juxtaposition of passion and fear, excitement and guilt. It was a constant battle between heart and mind, desire and duty. As I navigated this complex web of emotions, I couldn't help but question the sustainability of our relationship. How long could we continue down this path before the inevitable happened? How long before the consequences of our actions caught up to us? As autumn faded into winter, the affair with my neighbor reached a pivotal point. Our secret meetings and late-night conversations had created a world of our own, a world built on passion and escapism. But as the days grew shorter and the nights colder, the reality of our situation began to cast a long, ominous shadow over our clandestine relationship. The thrill of the affair was intoxicating, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate the complexities of our dual lives. The fear of discovery was ever present, a constant reminder of the potential fallout that could shatter our families and our reputations. Yet, despite these fears, we continued to meet, driven by a desire that seemed to defy reason. Our affair was no longer just a physical attraction, it had evolved into an emotional bond that neither of us had anticipated. We found solace in each other's company, sharing our dreams, fears, and frustrations. It was as if we were trying to fill the voids in our lives with each other's presence. However, with each stolen moment, the burden of guilt grew heavier. I was acutely aware of the deceit we were perpetrating. My husband, oblivious to the betrayal, continued his routine, while I lived a lie. The contrast between my two worlds was stark, and it weighed heavily on my conscience. The emotional turmoil was further compounded by the increasing risks we were taking. We had to be more careful, more discreet, as the likelihood of being caught loomed larger with each passing day. The stress of maintaining the facade in front of our families and friends was taking its toll. Our communication became more guarded, and our meetings more sporadic. The carefree nature of our early encounters had given way to a more somber reality. We both knew that we were walking a tightrope, and one misstep could lead to disaster. One evening, as I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The affair had brought excitement and passion into my life, but it had also brought fear and anxiety. The contradiction of my feelings was overwhelming. I longed for the moments with my neighbor, yet dreaded the potential consequences. The turning point came one chilly evening when he came to see me while our respective spouses were occupied. As we embraced under the cover of darkness, I felt a sense of foreboding. This wasn't just a passionate encounter, it was a moment of recklessness that could unravel everything we had been trying to keep hidden. As he held me, I could sense a change in his demeanor. There was a tension in his embrace, a hesitation in his touch. It was as if he too was beginning to realize the magnitude of our actions. The passion that once felt exhilarating now felt fraught with danger. Our secret world, once a refuge from our unfulfilling lives, was turning into a prison of our own making. The lies and deceit were building walls around us, and I found myself struggling to breathe. The affair, which had started as a means of escape, was now a source of constant anxiety and fear. In the days that followed, our communication became more strained. The playful banter and deep conversations were replaced by brief, cautious exchanges. We were both aware of the risks, and the fear of getting caught was affecting our interactions. As I reflected on the affair, I began to question the choices I had made. The initial excitement had blinded me to the potential consequences, but now I was faced with the reality of my actions. The guilt, the fear, and the uncertainty were consuming me. I realized that we had reached a crossroads. We could no longer continue down this path without facing the inevitable consequences. The affair had changed us both, but it was time to face the reality of our situation. The cold, hard truth was that our relationship was built on a foundation of lies and secrecy. It was unsustainable, and sooner or later, something had to give. The thought of ending the affair was heartbreaking, but the thought of continuing it was equally terrifying. As the chapter of our affair came to a close, I was left with a sense of loss and regret. The affair had brought moments of happiness, but it had also brought pain and complication. I was left to ponder the cost of our actions and the impact they would have on our lives. Winter had fully settled in, its icy grip turning the world outside into a frosty tableau. Inside, however, a different kind of chill had taken hold of my life. The affair, once a source of warmth and escape, had become a source of constant anxiety and fear. The turning point came one morning, a moment that would forever change the course of our relationship. It started like any other day, but as I prepared for the usual routines, I received a message from him that sent a wave of panic through me. He wanted to meet urgently, a request that was unusual given our cautious approach in recent weeks. The tone of his message was terse, a stark contrast to the affectionate words we once exchanged. We met at a secluded spot, away from the prying eyes of our neighborhood. The cold winter air was biting, but it was nothing compared to the icy tension between us. As soon as I saw his face, I knew something was wrong. The usual warmth in his eyes was replaced by a look of concern and fear. He wasted no time in revealing the reason for our urgent meeting. His wife had become suspicious. She hadn't found anything concrete, but her instincts had been alerted. He told me how she had started asking questions, probing into his whereabouts, and examining his phone. The walls were closing in, and the reality of our situation was becoming impossible to ignore. The news hit me like a physical blow. The possibility of our affair being discovered had always been a distant fear, but now it was a tangible threat. The implications were massive, not just for us but for our families, our children. The thought of the pain and hurt that would ensue was overwhelming. As we stood there, shivering in the cold, a sense of desperation enveloped us. We realized that our careless whispers and stolen moments had led us to a precipice. We were no longer just two individuals seeking solace in each other. We were potential catalysts for a disaster that could ruin multiple lives. The conversation that followed was a blur of fear, regret, and frantic planning. We talked about ending the affair, about taking steps to distance ourselves from each other. But even as we discussed these measures, a part of me knew it was too late. The Pandora's box of our affair had been opened, and there was no going back. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I went through the motions of my daily life, but my mind was elsewhere. I was haunted by the thought of my husband discovering the truth, of my children being caught in the crossfire of our indiscretion. The guilt that I had managed to suppress for so long came crashing down on me with full force. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The darkness of the room mirrored the turmoil in my heart. I thought about my neighbor, about the moments we had shared, about the dreams we had whispered to each other in the dead of night. But now, those dreams seemed like distant memories, overshadowed by the looming nightmare of exposure. In the days that followed, our communication dwindled to almost nothing. The fear of being discovered had forced us into a state of virtual estrangement. Each day was a struggle, a balancing act between maintaining a semblance of normalcy and dealing with the internal chaos. The affair had reached its tipping point. We had crossed a line from which there was no return, and now we were facing the consequences. The once passionate and exhilarating relationship had turned into a source of dread and regret. As the chapter of our affair drew to a close, I was left to confront the harsh reality of our actions. The consequences of our choices were no longer just a distant possibility, they were an imminent threat. The affair had brought us moments of happiness, but it had also brought us to the edge of a precipice, and now we were teetering on the brink of a fall that would shatter everything we held dear. The cold days of winter continued to envelop our town, but a different kind of frost had settled over my life. The secret that I had harbored for months was no longer just mine to bear. The revelation came unexpectedly, shattering the fragile illusion of normalcy that I had clung to. It was a typical weekday evening when the facade finally crumbled. I was at home, the kids were asleep, and my husband was watching TV. That's when the doorbell rang, an innocuous sound that would normally not have caused any concern. But when I opened the door, I was met with the sight of my neighbor's wife, her eyes red and her expression a mix of anger and pain. The confrontation that followed was a blur of accusations and revelations. She had found evidence of our affair, irrefutable proof in the form of messages and pictures. Her voice trembled with emotion as she recounted her discovery, each word like a dagger to my heart. My husband, drawn by the commotion, joined us at the door. The look of confusion on his face quickly turned to shock and then to anger as he realized the gravity of the situation. The world as I knew it was unraveling before my eyes. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest I had ever endured. I had to face not only the hurt and betrayal I had caused my husband, but also the pain I had inflicted on an innocent woman. The guilt that I had managed to suppress for so long was now overwhelming, suffocating me with its weight. My neighbor's wife left after delivering her painful message, leaving me to face the aftermath with my husband. The air was thick with tension and unsaid words. The betrayal hung heavily between us, a barrier that seemed insurmountable. The days that followed were a haze of difficult conversations, tears, and heartache. My husband was devastated by the betrayal. The trust that had been the foundation of our marriage was shattered, and the future of our family was now uncertain. As for my neighbor, the exposure of our affair had a profound impact on his life as well. His marriage was in turmoil, and the strain it put on his relationship with his daughter was evident. The affair that had started as a secret shared between two unhappy individuals had spiraled into a situation that hurt everyone involved. In the midst of this turmoil, I was forced to confront the reality of my actions. The affair, which had once seemed like an escape from my monotonous life, had brought nothing but pain and destruction. I had been seeking happiness in the wrong place, and now I was paying the price. The emotional toll of the exposure was immense. I struggled with feelings of guilt, shame, and regret. I had caused so much pain to the people I cared about, and the realization of that was crushing. The affair had been a mistake, a lapse in judgment that had far-reaching consequences. As the chapter of the affair came to a close, I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken life. The future was uncertain, and the road to healing and forgiveness seemed long and daunting. The affair had changed me, and now I had to find a way to move forward, to learn from my mistakes and rebuild my life. The final chapter of my story is one of reckoning and reflection. The affair that I thought would bring me happiness ended up costing me everything. In seeking what I thought was missing in my life, I lost what I had, a painful irony that wasn't lost on me. Karma, it seemed, had a way of balancing the scales. In the aftermath of the exposure, my life as I knew it fell apart. My husband, unable to forgive the betrayal, decided to end our marriage. The divorce was a painful process, not just for us but for our children as well. They became the unintended victims of my actions, caught in the crossfire of a situation they neither understood nor deserved. My relationship with my neighbor also came to an abrupt end. The affair had been built on a foundation of secrecy and desire, and once those were stripped away, there was nothing left to sustain it. He went back to his family, trying to salvage what was left of his marriage, leaving me to face the consequences of our actions alone. The loss of my husband, my lover, and the life I knew was a heavy price to pay. I was left to confront the harsh reality of my actions. The affair, which had started as an escape, turned into a catalyst for destruction, affecting not just my life, but the lives of those around me. As I navigated through the aftermath, I had a lot of time to reflect on my choices. The pain and hurt I caused were immeasurable, and the guilt was a constant companion. I had acted selfishly, driven by my desires, without considering the impact on my family and others. The realization of this was a bitter pill to swallow. The concept of karma became a recurring theme in my thoughts. I had betrayed my husband, declaring that I didn't care about him, only to end up losing everything that mattered. The universe had a way of delivering justice, and in my case, it was swift and unforgiving. If you found this story gripping, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories. Your support. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an unbelievable story about a husband who uncovered his nurse wife's affair, leading to a shocking divorce drama you won't believe. Hospital. They told me she left a few hours ago. I thought, wait, why would she tell me she had to go to work? But they said she left a few hours ago. That didn't make sense. I decided to drive by her work to see if her car was there, and it wasn't. So I continued to drive around the area of the hospital, but still didn't see her car. I called her again, but nothing. Goes straight to voicemail. So I left a message. I'm trying not to panic, but I have this sick feeling in my stomach. I just know something isn't right. My wife has never kept anything from me, never. Even when we dated in college, when she was going for her Bachelor's of Science degree. This is why I am a little concerned, because I know if something is bothering her, she would tell me. I'm not sure what to do, but I know I need to find out what is going on. So I continue to drive around looking for a car, but I still couldn't find her car. So I go home and just wait for her to call me. At about 7 in the morning, she calls and apologizes that she had a busy night at the hospital. That's why she didn't call me back. I thought to myself, she is lying. I know she is, but I just said, it's okay. We'll talk when you get home. At about 8 a.m., my wife gets home and starts to tell me this story about a patient that came in that needed around-the-clock care, but I couldn't pay attention because I knew she was lying to me. As I continued to listen, all I could think about was how could I find out why she was lying to me? We talked for a little bit longer. Then she went and cleaned up and eventually went to bed. I went to work. I work for the city. So I wasn't able to just take off and try to track her movements. If she was cheating on me, I wanted to find out. I called a few private investigators on my lunch break. It's quite expensive, but these guys are good. And I just didn't have the time to keep trying to follow her to see what she was doing. We live in Georgia, and I am in the process of researching the divorce laws here. I don't want a divorce, but if she's cheating on me, I want out. The good thing is that we don't have any kids. She has had 3 miscarriages in our marriage. This is not the marriage I signed up for. This is not the woman I married 20 years ago, but I need to find out for sure one way or another. The private investigator I talked to said he would be able to find out what she was doing and who she was seeing, but it would take some time. I told the private investigator that I would think about it and get back to him. When I got home at about 5 p.m., my wife was in the bedroom talking to someone, and I didn't know who she was talking to, but I could tell she was upset. So I just went into the kitchen and started making dinner. After a few minutes, she comes into the kitchen and told me she was talking to her best friend and that she was going through some personal issues and needed to talk to someone. My wife had to work that night, so I made her a plate that she could take to work and we talked for a few more minutes. Then she got herself together and she left for work a little later. At about midnight, I called the hospital trying to get in touch with her, but the same thing happened. They said she left about 30 minutes ago to get something to eat. I thought to myself, wait, I made her something to eat. It was at that moment that I decided I was going to hire the private investigator. I didn't call her cell phone after I called the hospital. The next morning on the way to work, I called the private investigator and gave him my credit card over the phone. Then I planned to go in and see him and give him pictures and some other information. After work, I gave the private investigator all the information and signed some paperwork. I indicated to him that I wanted him to start right away. For the first couple of nights of surveillance, the private investigator said my wife's car didn't move, which was a little surprising, but I knew it was just a matter of time. The private investigator said he would call me if anything happened. A few nights later, I got a call from the private investigator and he said he had some video footage of my wife going into someone's house. The private investigator said my wife seemed suspicious. He said when she walked out to her car, she would look around before getting in to see if anyone was around. She would then get in her car and, to his surprise, looked like she changed clothes in her car into something more of a workout attire. He said she drove 10 minutes away from the hospital to a house late at night. It looked like she had a key to it because she would drive up and go right in. The private investigator said she would stay between 45 minutes to an hour and then leave, but no one ever came to the door with her when she left. He said she would drive back to the hospital, change back into her work clothes, and go back into the hospital, which turned out to be her lunch break. But I told him I needed more, something showing me that she was touching another man inappropriately. As horrible as it sounded, I told him I needed it to be concrete. So the private investigator said he would keep trying to get more video footage. A few nights later, he called me back and said he had more video footage of my wife, but this time she met a guy at an all-night diner. He said she walked into the diner. There was a guy sitting at a table. My wife walked up, kissed him, and sat down. The private investigator said she must have taken an extended lunch break because she has only gone almost an hour before heading back to work. But this time she didn't do that. After they ate, the private investigator said they both got into separate vehicles and went back to his place. They got out of their cars, walked up to the front door, and started making out before they walked in. After that surveillance footage, I told the private investigator to compile it for me and to let me know when he is done. Over the next few days, I started getting my affairs in order. I wanted to make sure that everything was taken care of so I wouldn't have to worry about anything. I met with my attorney and told him what was going on, and he started helping me file for divorce and advised me on what I should do next. A few days later, the private investigator called me and said he had the video footage put together. So I went over to his office and he showed me the footage. While all this is going on, I haven't told my wife anything or acted any different. And yes, you guessed it. We do have a dead bedroom, and I wonder why. My lawyer asked me that I want to go for spousal support. I said, spousal support? He said, you know your wife as a nurse practitioner makes almost $100,000 a year in some cases. I told him, yeah, she does make pretty good money. She is almost at $100,000. And I told him I make about $55,000 a year. My attorney says that's a decent disparity in income. You could go for spousal support. I said, what the hell? Let's go for it. I don't think I would have a chance, but might as well try. So we put it in the divorce papers. A few weeks later, my wife has served with divorce papers and she is shocked. She didn't see it coming. She calls me and asks me what is going on. I told her, I think you know what's going on. She asked me if I had someone following her. I said, yes, and I did. Once she found out I was onto her, she apologized and wanted us to try marriage counseling. I declined everything she offered. I told her it was all BS. I have since moved out, got my own apartment. She owns the house. Her father gave it to her before we were married. I didn't want it, but I was going after spousal support. At the divorce hearing, after the evidence of my wife cheating on me was presented, my wife's attorney tried to get the spousal support claim thrown out, but it was denied by the judge. And he did award me spousal support for 6 years in the amount of $900 per month. I was actually surprised that I got anything. I was a free man. I never heard from or saw my ex-wife again after the divorce hearing. In the coming weeks, the private investigator and I kept in touch, sort of. It turns out that the guy that my ex-wife was having an affair with was a police officer who was also married. In the times my ex-wife was going to his place, his wife was away on business. And when she came back, she found out about his affair and shot him. He survived, and she is awaiting trial for what I've heard. Oh, since this has happened, I did receive my first $900 alimony payment. I would imagine this turned out to be an expensive mistake on our part. I guess it's true what they say. You have to pay to play. I want to thank everyone for their comments. I didn't know these type of forums existed where people share their most intimate details and failures. But thank you. I am healing, and the passive income also helps. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I sincerely appreciate your time. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.